I'm sailing north to Nia Bay. After 3 days at sea, as you can see, there's no land in sight. We've made 280 northern miles, and now it's time to turn back to the coast to complete this journey. But it's not over yet. I decided to wake up and warm up the engine so it was ready for the afternoon. But after 3 days of pure wind, the droning of the engine was annoying me, so I decided to play along. I started sailing back in 2020 after an abrupt upheaval of all the plans I was previously working towards. I needed to find a new path and really return back to my roots. I was lost. Like a game of toss or chance, it was all up in the air. And there is where I found the one thing that played fair. Gravity. Now, gravity is a funny friend, but one in which you can always depend. So when I found no solace in still contemplation, I returned to my roots and ran without a plan until I fell and tipped the scale towards something I could feel, for I knew I could not heal while standing still. And on that path I played with potential, and I found exponential growth towards a life that once I only saw as a dream, but now seemed possible. Now this wasn't a point or pivot or turn that you could see simply. It was 4 years of hard work on my ship and myself. When so many other factors in my life had fallen, I found that sailing could be simple. Now this isn't to say that the ocean or the wild whims of the wind have any predictability, but on a boat, it's like a bubble of responsibility and sustainability that you have to manage. The laws of physics are a constant, and it's often tenacity that makes a good sailor, not just technique.
Well, this is not how I wanted to end the trip, but I had fuel issues. Air got into my fuel system. Had a good 3 days of sailing. I go to turn the engine on, and it's a hiccup. So I've done that before. I've fled the system, but since I was pretty close to turning into the Strait of Juan de Fuca, I tacked out to buy myself time. So I'm trying to reprime it, get the day tank topped off so there's enough gravity to feed through, and use all the bleed plugs. They have 3 different points you can bleed air out of. I've checked the first one so far, but I'm going to fill up this tank before checking the other ones, because otherwise you have to crank it with the, I think you got to crank it with the valves open.
At this point in the trip, I was facing the lack of sleep, the potential of entering an unfamiliar bay without secondary propulsion, and I was losing daylight. In my mind, the worst case scenario was spending another night at sea, working and then coming back in. But before I got far enough offshore that I was out of sail range, I decided to make a call to the Coast Guard. Now, this was not on the radio. I have a farther range on that. So I called their non-emergency line at the station in Nia Bay, and I discussed with the dispatcher that I just wanted a standby. Please check in on me in 24 hours if I don't come in, because I'm having engine failure and I'm working on it. But I still made it clear that I had propulsion, I was under power, under control with sail, just had to work on the engine before I was able to enter, and that at the worst case I might need a tow right outside the harbor just to get around into the bay. And after that I went back to work down below.
Alright, so a little trouble at sea. Went to start the engine just to get into the bay. We sailed all the way here and wanted to have the engine for safety getting into the harbor. When doing that, I heard a hiccup, and the fuel lines had air in them. So one of the tanks must have been mixed up or leaning over, because we were heeled over pretty far, so it sucked up some air. Regardless, I switched it all up, got to a tank that's reliable, primed the tank down to the filters, so down to the Raycor filters, made sure that was good. Then I had to run through and get to the engine's lift pump. And so at the lift pump, and I went there, and I had to go to this secondary filter, and the secondary filter is a water separator before it goes to the actual pump. So when bleeding the air out of that system, I had to use the lever on the lift pump to pump it up. However, at that point, I was having a hard time getting it to actually lift until I went back and I read through on the manual. So on the manual it said if the drive shaft is in the wrong cycle, if it's facing the wrong way, then fuel won't go through. So I had to click the ignition a little bit to get it to get through the other side of the cycle. That way fuel would actually move through.
In the following clips I try to explain the repairs as I do it, but with the sea state sloshing me about and how exhausted I was, it's a lot of mumbo jumbo, so maybe I'll do a follow-up video later if somebody's interested in explaining the fuel system on a marine diesel.
So then that fuel pump's way there. And if I said that one was hard to get to, this one's even worse to get to. It has 2 bleed screws there. And so once that was primed, then it goes up to all the injectors. And I was having a bit of a hard time with how heeled I was. I put all the sail power back on just so I would have control and sailed away from shore, so to buy myself time. But that brought it to where I couldn't exactly get... Oh, see, I didn't tighten this one all the way down yet. Once those were all primed, I was able to get the engine started. One thing that helped is I wired in a second ignition switch that I can reach to here and start it while doing it, so that way I was cranking it while leading the fuel out of those lines. Without that, I don't think I could have done this job because there's too much time between going to the cockpit start and back to here. And I gave the Coast Guard a little call just to be on standby, and I said standby. I did not say emergency, I did not need assistance, I said standby. After I made that call, I was down here repairing the fuel system and going through tests. I had engine started once, but I was going back through and retightening everything before doing the final test. Unknown to me at the time, my radio was going off. And they were trying to get a hold of me for more information, but since I didn't respond, since I couldn't hear, my standby turned into a manhunt. And when I popped my head back up out of this engine room, a Coast Guard boat was already there. They sent the cavalry out. They got a little salute from the Navy, they sent out a plane. That went by, tipped his wings, stuff, and I'm on the radio like, hey, I'm just working on it. I'm safe. I'm under power. I'm just sailing. I tried telling them it, but then they brought a Coast Guard ship around, and I was still working on it. They keep on calling me on the radio, and asking me something. I'm like, hey, it was a standby. Whoa, I'm good. I'm just in the engine room working. I'm not. But they thought I was dead because I wasn't responding on the radio, so they like freaked out. And like, so finally I jump out. I'm like, I'm all right. I'm okay. And sure enough, they're like, well, now we need to take you under tow. They take me under tow. 5 minutes later, the thing started. My engine's running. I'm fine. I'm good. I just needed 5 minutes. Ay. Now, I'm not trying to state blame or even try to complain. It was just a failure of communication. Without the context or the tone of the initial conversation, the first dispatcher had to try to communicate and pass on the information to their superiors. And somewhere along the line, somebody was looking for more information, and when they didn't get it, they sent for it.
Finished bleeding the fuel system a second time, but the Coast Guard was already there before I was able to do a test under load. So after a bit of discussion, we decided it was safer to take a tow
not
while I
exactly
tested.
how I wanted to be coming into Nia Bay, but there's a strait for Wanapooka right there. That's Washington, and that's Canada, Vancouver Island right there. Ooh, it's wet. But look at me now. Going faster than this boat ever will under sail.
Now, my pride definitely took a hit for this one, and I put off posting this video long enough, but I believe there's a lesson to be learned and wisdom to be earned. I will still stand by my decision to contact the Coast Guard before going down into the engine room, but I should have been more clear with a check-in time rather than a broad 24 hours.
Come on. I'll just cut the line. What are they going to do if I cut the line? Like, really? What are they going to do? Chase me down? I ain't breaking no laws.
Now, of course, I mean this all jokingly. I really appreciate that the Coast Guard takes their calls seriously, but at this point, I was feeling very trapped by the tow line. Just a few minutes after taking the tow, I was able to test the engine, and I left it running for the duration of the tow.
The line of a system that was already running, not one that was hiccuping in the sea state. We were going fast. We were heeled over, rail in the water, backing right by that island right there. And so when I had that issue, I was like, okay, well, I've just got to get offshore. Oh, that's a big swell. Woo. Anyways, you know, it's not how I wanted this trip to end, but on my way to Nia Bay, with a little help.
I took the tow around Cape Flattery and into the Strait of Wanapooka. From here, after testing the engine for the duration of the tow, I was able to proceed under my own power and complete the trip. However, like a walk of shame, I had the Coast Guard tailing me on the way back, just for safety. We entered in the bay, we got to the dock so we could talk. Despite the end of this trip, it's only the beginning of the rest of the summer of sailing. Next up, I recover and repair, make new friends, and venture to explore the shore. Follow along for the next one.